She was 32 feet away. 32 feet, the length of a school bus. 10 steps at a jog. She saw the man. She saw the boy. She saw the car. She kept running. What you're about to hear is not the story of a monster, though there is one in it. It is the story of a crowd of 40 to 60 ordinary people who all had the same thought at the same moment, and what that thought cost a 9-year-old boy named Lucas Avery. The last photograph taken of him shows him on the climbing frame at Centennial Park in Nashville, Tennessee. He is grinning. One of his front teeth had fallen out at breakfast that morning, dropped right into his cereal bowl, which he'd found so funny he'd nearly choked. His mother had promised him $1 from the tooth fairy. She was going to put it under his pillow that night. She never got the chance. June 9th, 2017, 3:49 p.m. A man took Lucas Avery from a public playground in full sunlight with dozens of people nearby, and not a single person called 911 in time. One witness saw a license plate. She remembered 3 of the 7 characters. 3. It wasn't enough. This is what happens when we all assume someone else will act.
Before we go anywhere near what happened, we have to talk about who he was. Because cases like this have a way of collapsing a child into a photograph, an age, a set of clothes last seen wearing. And Lucas Avery deserves more than that. He had known every dinosaur by its Latin name since he was 5 years old. Not just T-Rex and Triceratops. He meant the obscure ones: Pachycephalosaurus, Ankylosaurus, Therizinosaurus. He'd once corrected a teacher in front of the whole class, stood up from his seat, very politely, and told her she'd confused a Brachiosaurus with an Apatosaurus. He was right. The teacher looked it up and confirmed it at afternoon pickup. Donna had stood in the car park feeling simultaneously mortified and prouder than she had words for. He put hot sauce on everything: eggs, rice, once a bowl of cereal on a dare from himself. He refused to wear shoes inside the house, would kick them off at the door the second he got home, every single time, regardless of how many times Donna asked him not to because the hardwood got cold in winter. He slept with a stuffed elephant named Gerald. Gerald was gray and threadbare from years of being held, and had one eye slightly off-center from where it had been re-sewn after coming loose. Lucas claimed Gerald was babyish, and that he only kept him for historical reasons. Gerald was on his pillow every night. He was funny. Not in the way adults call kids funny, endearing, cute. Actually funny. He had timing. He'd pause before a punchline exactly long enough to make you wait for it. Donna used to say that he got that from nobody, because certainly not his father, and certainly not her. And she'd say it laughing. He was 9 years old. Donna Mitchell was 34 in June of 2017. She had raised Lucas alone since he was 3. His father had left, and she had not spent much time looking back, because there was too much forward to attend to. She worked as a dental hygienist 3 days a week at a practice on Charlotte Avenue. The other days were for Lucas, grocery runs and homework and the park. Their park was Centennial Park, 9 minutes from the apartment. They went on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Donna would find the bench near the bandshell, the one with the partial shade from the magnolia, and Lucas would run. And eventually he'd come back, sweaty and probably scraped somewhere, and they'd get ice cream from the cart near the west gate on the way home. Chocolate for him, always. Strawberry for her, usually. Sometimes she'd steal a bite of his. It wasn't a complicated life, but on the days she let herself notice it, it was the best one she'd ever had. June 9th, 2017 was a Thursday. Nashville in early June carries heat the way the South always does. Not weather exactly, but atmosphere. It presses against you. The air at Centennial Park that afternoon was thick and warm and smelled of cut grass and the particular mineral sweetness of fountain water. The park was busy. It is always busy when the sun cooperates. Families spread on the grass near the Parthenon, that full-scale replica of Athens' ancient temple that Nashville inexplicably and magnificently has planted in the middle of the city. Joggers on the outer path, a man reading on a bench, two teenagers sharing headphones by the fountain, dog walkers. The ordinary, comfortable texture of people living their lives on a Thursday afternoon. Donna Mitchell had found her bench near the bandshell. She was reading a novel she'd borrowed from a coworker 3 weeks ago and kept meaning to return. Lucas was on the climbing frame, 30 feet away, clearly visible when she looked up. She looked up regularly. At 3:47 p.m., a man entered the playground area from the east footpath. White male, mid-40s, gray baseball cap, dark blue long-sleeved shirt. Unusual for the heat, though no one registered that as significant at the time. Jeans, medium build. He moved with the easy, unhurried pace of someone who had been here before, someone who belonged. He had a dog, a tan Labrador mix, medium-sized, on a loose leash. The dog was friendly, tail up, ears forward, the body language of an animal that expects good things from strangers. Remember that dog. The man walked through the playground casually. He stopped near the swings and spoke briefly to a pair of children there. A few words, the kids responded. He moved on. Nothing about the exchange alarmed anyone. A man with a friendly dog having a friendly moment. He drifted toward the climbing frame, toward Lucas. Donna Mitchell was reading. What happened next took less than 90 seconds. The park surveillance camera covering the climbing frame had a partial obstruction that afternoon, a maintenance scaffold that had been up for 2 weeks, its corner edge cutting across the lower right of the frame. Investigators could see the man arrive at the base of the climbing frame. They could see him looking up at Lucas. They could see Lucas beginning to climb down. What they believe happened, reconstructed from the camera angle and from what Lucas's behavior typically was around dogs, is this. The man let the dog approach the base of the frame. Lucas, who loved animals with the particular intensity of a child who had been asking for a pet for 2 years and kept being told, maybe next year, climbed down to greet it, knelt down, let the dog lick his face. That's how it started. A dog with a friendly face and a wagging tail at the bottom of a climbing frame. By 3:49 p.m., Lucas and the man were walking together toward the east footpath, not running, not struggling. Walking, the man with one hand loosely near Lucas's shoulder, the dog trotting alongside them. To anyone watching, it looked like a father and son heading back to the car. Donna Mitchell looked up at 3:52 p.m. The frame was empty. She held the book open in her hands for a moment and looked around the playground with the particular calm of a parent whose child has just stepped out of their line of sight for the first time. Then she stood, walked to the frame, called his name once, louder. She checked the bathroom block. She checked the fountain. She walked the perimeter of the playground in the direction of the bandshell. She came back. She was moving fast now. At 3:55 p.m., Donna Mitchell reached the park's information stand near the west gate, and she said the words, "I can't find my son. He was right here. I can't find my son." Metro Nashville police were called at 3:57 p.m. First unit arrived at 4:06 p.m. Lucas had been gone for 17 minutes. Here is what investigators established through witness interviews conducted in the days that followed.
There were, conservatively, between 40 and 60 people in the general area of Centennial Park's main playground between 3:45 and 4 p.m. on June 9, 2017. Police identified and interviewed 11 of them. Of those 11, 4 reported seeing the man. 2 reported seeing Lucas and the man walking together toward the east footpath. One woman, a grandmother who had been pushing her granddaughter on the swings, reported feeling a flicker of unease that she described, in her own words, as probably nothing. I figured the boy knew him. None of them called 911. When investigators asked why, the answers were so consistent they could have been rehearsed. I thought it was his dad. The kid wasn't upset. He was petting the dog. He looked happy. There were plenty of people around. If something was really wrong, somebody would have done something. I didn't want to cause a scene if it was nothing. Take that last answer. Turn it over. I didn't want to cause a scene if it was nothing. That thought, polite, reasonable, socially conscious, is one of the most dangerous thoughts a human being can have in a public space. It is the thought that transformed a crowd of 40 to 60 people into, effectively, nobody. There is a name for this. Psychologists call it the bystander effect, and it works like this. The more people who witness an event, the less likely any one of them is to intervene. Not because people are cowardly, not because they don't care, but because in a crowd, responsibility diffuses. It spreads so thin across so many people that each individual carries almost none of it. Each person looks at the others and thinks, someone with more information, more certainty, a better view will handle this. Nobody handles it. The crowd at Centennial Park on that Thursday afternoon was not a crowd of bad people. It was a crowd of ordinary people doing what ordinary people do, which is exactly what makes it so hard to look at. But one person, that afternoon, saw more than the others did, carried more than the others would ever have to carry. Rachel Sutherland was 26 years old in June of 2017. She was a marketing coordinator at a firm in Midtown, recently out of a long relationship, and training for her first half marathon mostly because she needed something to do with the evenings. She had been running Centennial Park's outer loop 3 times a week for a month. She was on her second lap when she passed the playground at 3:49 p.m. She was checking her pace on her watch. Her eyes were forward. But peripheral vision is involuntary. You see what you see whether you're looking or not. And something in the movement at the edge of her field registered differently from the rest of the park's texture. A man pulling a child. Not guiding, not holding hands, pulling. The boy's arm was extended at the kind of angle you only get when someone much larger than you is moving faster than you want to go. Rachel Sutherland slowed. She had about 2 seconds in which to process what she was seeing before she would pass the footpath exit entirely. 2 seconds in which her brain, efficiently and without cruelty, assembled the most probable explanation. Custody situation. Dad picking up a kid who doesn't want to leave. Happens all the time. There's a dog. The kid was probably excited about the dog. There are people everywhere. If it was actually serious, someone would already be... She sped up. She passed the east footpath exit. In the parking lot beyond it, she saw a silver car, mid-size sedan, silver or light gray. The man was opening the rear door. The dog jumped in. The boy followed. Her eyes, still in motion, caught the rear of the car, the license plate. She didn't write it down. She completed her lap, drove home, showered, reheated leftovers, sat on her couch at 7:12 p.m., and opened her phone and saw the Amber Alert. Lucas Avery, age 9, brown hair, brown eyes, last seen Centennial Park, Nashville, red hoodie. Suspect, white male, 40s, gray cap, dark long-sleeved shirt. Vehicle, silver sedan. She read it once, read it again. The red hoodie, the gray cap, the dark shirt despite the heat, the dog jumping into the back seat first. She called 911 at 7:15 p.m. Detective Nathan Forsyth had been with Metro Nashville's Crimes Against Children unit for 8 years. He had worked abduction cases before. He knew the arithmetic. Every hour after an abduction, the odds of recovery contracted. By the time Rachel Sutherland sat down across from him, it had been nearly 4 hours. He was calm. Everyone who has ever worked with Nathan Forsyth describes him as calm. Depositions, media interviews, the recollections of colleagues. Not a still calm, a controlled one. The kind of calm that is a tool rather than a temperament. He took Rachel through it methodically. What she saw, where she was standing, the man, the child, the dog. Then, did you see the vehicle? Yes. Can you describe it? Silver sedan, mid-size, maybe a Toyota or Honda. I don't really know cars. Did you see the license plate? Rachel went quiet. She pressed her hands flat on the table. I saw it. I was running past. It was in my peripheral. Do you remember any of it? She closed her eyes. Forsyth waited. 7. It started with a 7, then F, then H, I think, or K. I'm not certain. I know I saw 3 characters. I didn't write it down. She stopped. I thought it was a custody thing. I thought someone else would call if it was actually wrong. I thought... She stopped again. Then she said something that Nathan Forsyth would remember for a long time after. If I had written it down and you ran it right now, would he still be out there? Forsyth looked at her for a moment. We're going to work with what you've given us. You did the right thing calling in tonight. It was the honest answer. It was also not the answer to the question she had asked. Both of them knew that. He wrote down the partial plate. 3 characters, 7, F, and either H or K. Tennessee plates ran 7 alphanumeric characters. 3 gave them a direction to face in a database of hundreds of thousands of registered vehicles in the Nashville metro area. Somewhere in that city, a 9-year-old boy was running out of time. Here's what you need to understand before the next section. Every break in this investigation, every piece of evidence, every lead, came from what was missing. 3 letters of a plate, 4 hours already gone. The entire case was built on a foundation of not enough from the very first moment. Nathan Forsyth coordinated immediately with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, issued the statewide Amber Alert, and circulated the suspect description across law enforcement channels in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama. Roadblocks were staged on the primary highway corridors out of Nashville within 90 minutes of the alert going out. The dog was the first detail that seemed useful and turned out to be useless. Davidson County has tens of thousands of registered dogs. Labs and lab mixes account for a significant percentage. The dog narrowed nothing. On day 2, investigators pulled and reviewed the full archive of Centennial Park's entrance camera, the one with the wider angle and better resolution. What they found made the room go quiet. The same man, the same dog. May 25th, 2017. A Thursday afternoon. June 1st, 2017. A Thursday afternoon. June 8th, 2017. A Thursday afternoon. And then June 9th. 4 consecutive Thursday afternoons
each visit between 3:30 and 4:30 p.m., the same window in which Donna Mitchell always brought Lucas to the park. Detective Forsyth wrote one word in his case notes when he confirmed the pattern: deliberate. This man had not wandered into Centennial Park on a warm day and made an impulsive decision. He had been there before. He had come back. He had stood in that park 3 Thursdays in a row, and he had watched the bench by the bandshell and the climbing frame, and a 9-year-old boy with a missing tooth. And he had made calculations. And the dog had been part of those calculations. A man alone approaching children at a playground is a red flag. A man with a friendly, tail-wagging Labrador is a prop, an invitation, a reason for children to approach him rather than the other way around, a reason for nearby adults to see warmth where they should see danger. Eric Coleman had used Bruno the way a magician uses misdirection. Look at the friendly thing. Don't look at the man holding the leash. On day 3, a traffic camera on West End Avenue, less than a mile from the park's east exit, yielded partial footage of a silver sedan at 3:54 p.m. on June 9th. Bad angle, grainy image, but a match on the vehicle type, heading southwest. 4 characters of the plate were retrievable: 7FH, and a 4th character the forensic imaging team worked for 9 hours to resolve. It was either K or X. Tennessee DMV, 11 registered silver or light gray mid-size sedans with plates beginning 7FH in the Nashville metro area, 6 beginning 7FHK, 5 beginning 7FHX. 11 names, 11 registered owners to run through the system. The second name on the 7FHK list was Eric Coleman, age 47, Bellevue area, Nashville, registered sex offender. Tier 3, Tennessee's highest risk classification, reserved for individuals assessed as posing the greatest likelihood of reoffense. His prior victim, a child. Vehicle registered, 2013 silver Honda Accord. Also registered, one tan Labrador mix named Bruno. Nathan Forsyth later testified that the moment he read Coleman's name on that list, his hands went cold. Not with relief at finding a suspect, with the specific dread of understanding what they were about to find. Eric Coleman had been on the Tennessee Sex Offender Registry since 2008. He was known, documented, supposed to be monitored. He had been standing in a children's playground 4 Thursdays in a row. Police arrived at Eric Coleman's residence on Newsom Station Road, Bellevue, at 6:08 a.m. on June 12th. The silver Accord was in the driveway. Coleman answered the door himself. He was in a gray t-shirt and jeans. He looked at Nathan Forsyth. He looked at the officers behind him. He said, "I figured you'd come eventually." He did not ask what they were there for. He was taken into custody. Bruno was handed to animal control. The house was sealed for search. Lucas Avery was not in the house. Stop here. Rachel Sutherland remembered 7FH. The traffic camera gave investigators 7FHK. Eric Coleman's registered plate was 7FHK 408. If anyone in that parking lot at 3:49 p.m. on June 9th had written down the full plate, 7 characters, 15 seconds, Coleman's name would have been in a police database by 4:20 p.m. His photograph on file, his address registered, his Tier 3 classification flagged, officers at his door before the Amber Alert was issued. Instead, police arrived at his door at 6:08 a.m. on June 12th. 63 hours. That is not a number. Let it be time. 2 nights. Donna Mitchell sitting on Lucas's bed in the dark because she couldn't sleep in her own room, and she couldn't leave this one either. Touching the pillow where Gerald the elephant sat with his slightly off-center eye, not moving him, because moving him felt like admitting something she refused to admit. 2 mornings where she woke up, and for 1/2 second before she was fully conscious, everything was still normal, and then it wasn't. The family liaison officer, Anna Welch, sleeping on the couch because she wouldn't leave Donna alone in that apartment. The tooth fairy dollar on the refrigerator. Donna had put it there the night Lucas disappeared because she'd remembered she owed it to him, and she was going to give it to him when he got home. When he got home. 63 hours in which Eric Coleman had every opportunity to do what predators do when they understand that the walls are beginning to close. The search of Coleman's property and the surrounding area expanded outward. On June 14, 2017, 5 days after Lucas was taken from the climbing frame at Centennial Park, a search team working a section of dense tree cover off Highway 70 South, 7 miles from Coleman's home, found Lucas Avery. He had been deceased for an estimated 3 to 4 days. The coroner placed time of death within the first 24 hours after abduction. Those 63 hours, what they contained, what they meant. Donna Mitchell was sitting in her kitchen when the call came. Anna Welch was with her. The tooth fairy dollar was on the refrigerator. It stayed there for 11 months. Donna could not make herself take it down. She could not explain why, except that taking it down meant closing something that she was not ready to close. That maybe she would never be ready to close. And that maybe was not required to be ready. She moved out of that apartment in March 2018. She left the dollar on the refrigerator. She called the building manager the next morning and asked her to throw it away. She couldn't do it herself. Eric Coleman initially told police he had not been at Centennial Park on June 9th. He'd been home all afternoon. He'd walked Bruno in the neighborhood that morning. He had not been downtown. Investigators laid 4 photographs on the table in front of him. May 25th, June 1st, June 8th, June 9th. His face, clear and recognizable, at the park entrance camera. Bruno beside him, tail up. Coleman looked at the photographs for a long time. He said nothing. Then he asked for his lawyer. Those were the last words he spoke voluntarily to law enforcement. Think about what that silence meant. He looked at 4 photographs of himself at a children's playground on 4 consecutive Thursdays. He looked at them for a long time. And then he did not deny them. He did not explain them. He simply decided that the conversation was over. A man surprised by evidence argues with it. Eric Coleman had been waiting for those photographs for weeks. He already knew exactly what they showed. Which means the question that followed was not really about him. It was about the world that had let him keep walking back through that gate, Thursday after Thursday, unseen by anyone whose job it was to be watching. The subsequent internal review within Tennessee's Department of Correction was not looking for a villain. It was looking for a gap. It found one. Tier 3 sex offenders in Tennessee are required to check in with a supervising officer in person every 90 days, monthly phone contact in between. They are prohibited from entering areas where children congregate, parks, playgrounds, schools. Violations are supposed to trigger escalated monitoring. Coleman's supervising officer was a man named Paul Gill. At the time of Lucas's abduction, Paul Gill was managing a caseload of 58 Tier 3 offenders. Not 58 people, 58 of the state's highest-risk individuals. One person, responsible for monitoring 58 people who had been assessed as most likely to reoffend. The review found that Coleman's last in-person check-in had been 11 weeks before June 9th, that there had been one answered phone contact in the intervening period, during which Coleman had reported nothing of note, and one unanswered call that was logged but not followed up. No one had gone to his door. No one had said, "Where have you been on Thursday afternoons?" Paul Gill was not a negligent officer. The review said so explicitly. He was an overwhelmed one. The resources allocated to monitoring the registry were not sufficient for the registry's size. The math was impossible from the start. Eric Coleman had not slipped through a crack. He had walked through a gap that was systemic, structural, and known. The gap had a budget line. The gap had a staffing chart. The gap had been the subject of internal memos for years before June 9th, 2017. The gap had Lucas Avery's name on it. It just didn't know that yet. Eric Coleman's phone was sent to digital forensics immediately after his arrest. Its contents confirmed, without any remaining ambiguity, what investigators already understood him to have done. The contents of that phone will not be described here. Some things do not need to be described to be understood. But in a kitchen drawer at Coleman's house, folded twice, with no date, a handwritten note. 9 words. If I could stop, I would stop. I cannot stop. Read that again. Eric Coleman had known. He had known precisely what he was. He had written it down in private, on paper, in a drawer. A confession. A cry. The only honest document in the house. He had not reported himself to his supervising officer. He had not sought voluntary treatment. He had not knocked on Paul Gill's door and said the 9 words he had written on that piece of paper. He had gone to Centennial Park on a Thursday afternoon instead, and then another Thursday, and another, and another. There was no dramatic interrogation, no confrontation where truth cracked through. Eric Coleman had said 4 words at his front door. "I figured you'd come." And after that, nothing. His defense attorney, Ian Walsh, advised him appropriately, and he followed that advice with absolute discipline. He sat in every proceeding with his hands folded on the table. He looked at the surface in front of him. He did not look at Nathan Forsyth. He did not look at Donna Mitchell, who sat in the gallery at his arraignment with her hands in her lap and watched him with an expression that witnesses later struggled to describe. Not rage, not grief exactly, but something past both of those things. He did not look at her. He did not speak. In some cases, the confrontation is the moment a suspect breaks. In this one, the confrontation was the stillness itself, the absolute administrative calm of a man who had already, a long time ago, made his peace with what he was, the absence of surprise, the absence of shame. Just a man sitting with his hands folded, waiting for the next procedural step. Nathan Forsyth said in a later interview, he wasn't surprised, not by any of it. And that was the part I couldn't shake. You expect rage, denial, something. He just wasn't surprised. The silence was the answer. It was just a very hard answer to live with. Ian Walsh entered a not guilty plea at arraignment on July 3, 2017. 4 months of pretrial proceedings followed. The state's evidence was substantial. Surveillance footage placing Coleman at the park on 4 consecutive Thursdays. Traffic camera, partial plate. Rachel Sutherland's witness account. Forensic phone evidence. The 9-word note in his own handwriting. On November 20th, 2017, Eric Coleman entered a guilty plea on all counts. The hearing lasted 38 minutes. The courtroom was not large. The gallery held perhaps 60 people. Most of the seats were filled. Donna Mitchell sat in the second row with Anna Welch beside her and her hands in her lap, the same way she had sat at every proceeding. She wore a dark blue coat. Her hair was pulled back. She looked at the back of Eric Coleman's head with the expression that witnesses had struggled to name and would keep struggling to name. And perhaps there wasn't a word for it in any language that covered the full territory of what it meant to sit in a room while the man who took your son listened to a judge tell him he would die in a cell. Coleman's hands were folded on the table. The judge, a tall woman with reading glasses on a chain, looked at Coleman for a long moment before she spoke. There are cases where this court is asked to consider the circumstances that produced a person capable of what sits before us today. I have considered them. I find them insufficient to alter what justice requires. She announced the sentence: life without the possibility of parole. Coleman did not react. He absorbed the words the way a wall absorbs sound. A door at the side of the courtroom opened. 2 corrections officers stood up. Coleman stood. He walked toward the door. He did not look at Donna Mitchell. He never looked at Donna Mitchell. Not once. In every proceeding, every hearing, every moment they had been in the same room, he had not once turned to look at her. The door closed. Donna Mitchell sat in the second row of the gallery and did not move for a moment. Then Anna Welch put her hand over Donna's and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Justice had been served. Her son was still gone. Both of those things were true simultaneously, and they did not cancel each other out, and they never would. Now we come back to where this story began, not to the park, not to the playground, to a silver car in a parking lot on a Thursday afternoon, and a woman running past it, and a license plate her eyes registered and her hands did not write down. The plate, 7FHK 408. What Rachel Sutherland remembered: 7FH. She had 3 of 7 characters. Her memory was accurate as far as it reached. If she had stopped for 30 seconds, taken out her phone, opened the Notes app, captured 7 characters as she passed, Eric Coleman's name would have been in a police database by 4:20 p.m. on June 9, 2017. 31 minutes after Lucas left the climbing frame. His photograph on file, his address registered, his Tier 3 classification flagged. Officers dispatched before the Amber Alert was even drafted. Does that mean Lucas would have been found alive? We cannot say with certainty. The timeline of what Coleman did and when is not fully known. The honest answer is, we don't know. That uncertainty is real and it matters. What we know is that 32 minutes is not 63 hours. And that is the distance between what Rachel had and what might have been enough. 4 characters. 4. After Coleman's arrest, when his plate number appeared in news coverage, Rachel Sutherland sat at her kitchen table and took a piece of paper and wrote down what she remembered. 7FH. Then she wrote the full plate beneath it. 7FHK 408. She sat and looked at both lines for a long time. She got it right. Her first 3 characters were exactly right. She had been standing in that parking lot with the answer in her peripheral vision, and she had filed it as background noise, and she had run on. And here were the 2 lines of 7 characters, her 3 and the actual 7, sitting on a piece of paper at her kitchen table. Rachel Sutherland did not sleep well for a long time after that. Eric Coleman was guilty. That belonged to him entirely, and to no one else. But the gap between her 3 characters and the 7 she needed was real. And Rachel carried it the way the mind carries things it has no place to put down. Not as memory exactly, but as weight. Her therapist, Dr. Claire Rampling, had a clinical name for it. Rachel just knew what it felt like at 2 a.m. She stopped running, not as a metaphor. She stopped literally. The muscle memory of that afternoon comes back in ordinary moments. The pace of her own body moving forward, her eyes on her watch, the peripheral flash of a man and a child. And she has to stop whatever she is doing and breathe until the image passes. She has not run since that summer. She quit her job at the marketing firm. She went back to school. In 2022, she completed a graduate degree in public health at Vanderbilt, her thesis on the bystander effect and intervention barriers in public emergency situations. Her thesis advisor later said it was the most personally inhabited piece of academic writing he had reviewed in 20 years. In 2023, she founded a nonprofit, See It, Say It, Now. The name is not subtle. The mission is not complicated. Community training programs in schools, workplaces, houses of worship, neighborhood centers. Practical, specific instruction in what to do when something in a public space feels wrong. How to call 911 while still moving. How to describe a person to a dispatcher in 20 seconds. How to capture a license plate accurately. The difference between a partial plate and a full one. The difference between 3 characters and 7. She speaks at events across Tennessee and in surrounding states. She does not use slides. She does not use a podium. She stands in the middle of the room, and at a specific point in every talk, she takes a photograph out of her wallet. Not her phone, her wallet, because it needs to be a physical thing she has carried. And she holds it up. The last photograph of Lucas Avery, on the climbing frame at Centennial Park, grinning, the gap where his front tooth had been. He was 32 feet from his mother. He was visible to 40 to 60 people. I was 30 feet from that parking lot, and I had 3 of the 7 characters that would have put police at that man's door in 30 minutes. 3. I needed 7. I needed 30 seconds. That is what I didn't give him. I'm not here to punish myself in front of you. I'm here because I know, from the research and from looking at faces like yours, that most of you would have made the same choice I made. Not because you're bad, because this is how we are built. The bystander effect doesn't sort for character. It doesn't check whether you're a good person. It worked on every single person in that park on a Thursday afternoon, and none of them were monsters. They were just people who thought someone else had it handled. Nobody had it handled. Nobody ever does, until someone decides to be the one. She puts the photograph back in her wallet. She keeps going. Eric Coleman is incarcerated at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. He is 60 years old. He will die there. That is the justice the law could give. A door that closed and will not open. A man who will never again stand in a parking lot with a dog and 4 Thursdays of patience and a piece of paper in a kitchen drawer that said, "I cannot stop." It is real justice. It is also insufficient justice. Both of those things are true, and the case forces you to hold them together. Because Donna Mitchell was right when she said it at the legislature, and right when she said it again at the forum, and she will be right every time she says it until something fundamental changes.
You cannot arrest a gap. Eric Coleman in a cell does not reduce Paul Gill's caseload,
Does not rebuild the monitoring infrastructure for a registry that has grown far beyond the resources allocated to oversee it. Does not change the fact that in most U.S. states, the gap between the number of Tier 3 offenders and the number of people responsible for monitoring them is not a crack, it is a canyon, and people fall through canyons. And sometimes what falls with them is a 9-year-old boy on a Thursday afternoon. Tennessee passed amended supervision requirements in 2020, lower caseload caps for Tier 3 officers, mandatory in-person check-ins on a shorter cycle, unannounced compliance visits for offenders flagged as high concern. In advocacy circles, not officially, but in the rooms where people who work this issue gather, the amendments are called Lucas's Law. It is something. It is not enough. The gap remains. And somewhere, right now, there is another name on another list, and another supervision officer with too many cases and not enough hours, and another Thursday afternoon taking shape. The question, as it has always been, is whether anyone nearby will look up. 40 to 60 people, Centennial Park, June 9, 2017, 3:49 p.m. Police interviewed 11. Here is what can never be answered. How many of the other 40 to 50 registered something that afternoon? A silver car, a gray cap, a child in a red hoodie, and stored it as background noise, as the ambient data of an ordinary day, because their brain, doing its job of editing the world into manageable information, had determined it was not important. How many of them saw the Amber Alert that evening and felt something move in their stomach? Not recognition exactly, just a disturbance, like a word on the tip of the tongue, but could not connect it to the park, because the mind does not index what it is marked as irrelevant. How many of them are still out there, living their lives, carrying a memory they don't know they have? There is a version of June 9, 2017, where one more person pauses, where one more person takes out their phone, where one more person says, not even aloud, just to the dispatcher, I don't know if this is anything, but a man just walked a child toward the east parking lot and something didn't feel right. The dispatcher asks, did you catch the plate? And the answer is yes. And there are 7 characters. That version of that afternoon is real. It was possible. It existed as a path that could have been taken. It just wasn't. The bystander effect has one documented vulnerability. It dissolves when people know it exists. The knowledge changes the behavior. That is not a theory. It is one of the most consistently replicated findings in the psychology of public intervention. You now know. You know what it looks like when 40 people see something and every one of them assumes someone else is already handling it. You know what 3 characters of a license plate looks like when you needed 7. You know what a tooth fairy dollar on a refrigerator looks like when the person who put it there cannot make themselves take it down. You know what a 9-year-old boy with a missing front tooth and a stuffed elephant named Gerald looks like when he is on a climbing frame and someone is watching him from a Thursday away with calculations already made. You know. That knowledge is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. But it is the thing that, the next time you see something that doesn't feel right in a public space, might be the difference between keeping your eyes forward and stopping. Stop. Take out your phone. Write down 7 characters. Call. The worst outcome if you're wrong? A non-emergency. An embarrassing moment that gets resolved in 30 seconds. The worst outcome if you don't call? You already know. The last thing. Not the sentencing, not the legislation, not the nonprofit or the advocacy work or any of the things that exist in the aftermath. Just Donna Mitchell at a community forum in Nashville in September of 2021. She was the last speaker. She walked to the front of the room without notes. She stood there for a moment before she spoke. People ask me what I want from all of this, what I want it to mean. And the answer is both very simple and completely impossible, which is how grief works. It asks you to hold things that don't fit together. What I want is for Lucas to be here, to argue with me about hot sauce at dinner, to show me something about a dinosaur that I already know he's right about, to make me laugh. He was a genuinely funny kid, and not enough people know that. And I want it said out loud in a room full of people. He was funny. He had timing. He would have been something. What I'll settle for is simpler. I'll settle for a world where the next mother doesn't get the phone call I got, where the next Lucas is on that climbing frame 1 minute, and the minute after that, and the minute after that, and he comes home and his mother gives him $1 she already forgot to give him, and he rolls his eyes because it's late, but he takes it anyway and puts it under his pillow. I'll settle for that. If this case stayed with you, if any part of it made you look up from your phone and think differently about the next time you see something wrong, subscribe. Every case we cover matters because someone lived it. The least we can do is make sure more people know. Hit subscribe. It costs you nothing. It might mean everything to the next Donna Mitchell.